Here are 8 tricks that'll put you on the path to being a master at conditional formatting in Excel. I'm going to show you techniques that range from the relatively simple to the more advanced so that you will feel comfortable creating all sorts of complex functions and formulas across tables and worksheets and putting all that into your conditional formats. Before we start, check the video description and click the link to Teach Excel so you can download the files for the tutorial and follow along. And make sure to subscribe and accept notifications so you can see all the new tutorials. Here I have a very simple table we're going to use for this tutorial. It's got a part label, then it has a part number, manufacturer, stock price value, and over here we have a master worksheet we'll use for one of the later examples. So for the first example, let's talk about relative and absolute cell references. These are so important when we're dealing with conditional formats. So you may already know how those work. Let's do a simple example here. Equals, let's say sum, doesn't really matter what we do. And if I copy this down, the sum is now applied to every row, just like we want. But if I go here and I hit F4, or just put the dollar signs in front of all of the references and copy it down, the cell references do not change. And this works exactly the same for conditional formatting. So let's start with a very simple, very basic conditional format. And this will help you better understand the concept. Let's highlight these cells, any one of them that are over 5,000. Now in this tutorial, we're not going to be using any of these default rules. That's too easy and you can already figure out how to do that. Everything is going to be a custom rule. So you could go down here and click More Rules, or just go to the bottom right here, click Manage Rules, New Rule. Doesn't matter how you get to this screen, but once you get here, we're going to use a formula to determine which cells to format. So everything we do is going to be a custom formula or function here. Now what you want to do, it's a very good practice, you don't want to enter that formula by scratch here. You want to enter the formula first in the worksheet to make sure everything is okay and happy. So we equals, we want to see if this cell greater than 5,000. Hit enter. Now what we can do, I like to copy it down for the data set, just do a little checking. True, yes, yes, yes. Make sure everything looks good. Now let's go and grab this guy, copy, select the range where we want to apply the conditional formatting, Home tab, Conditional Formatting, New Rule, use a formula to determine which cells to format, paste it in there. Don't hit the arrow keys or do anything else here. It's very easy to mess this up once you've entered it. Go to Format. Let's give it a fill. Make it an orange. Hit OK. Hit OK. And now, everywhere that this said true, we have highlighted cells. Nice, neat, and perfect. Now, if I go here to Conditional Formatting, go to Manage Rules, we can see this rule here. You can see the formula over here equals F2 greater than 5,000, and you can see that it applies to the entire range F2 to F8. Now, let's redo this rule. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I know this seems basic, but it's going to be more important when we do the later examples. Now let's say I have dollar signs here. When I copy it down, you can see everything becomes false. Just like if I copy and paste this into the conditional formatting. New rule, formula, copy paste, format, orange, okay, okay. Nothing happens. This is the #1 issue with applying conditional formatting across ranges, cells, rows, columns, everything, is that people forget if they have a dollar sign in there or not, if it's absolute or relative, and they think, what the heck is wrong? I click the cells, go here, manage rules, everything looks okay. It looks almost exactly the same as the last time. It applies to F2 to F8, range F2 greater than 5,000, except for the dollar signs. So if we go here, let's remove these dollar signs, hit OK, hit OK. and everything is back to normal. So be very careful with absolute or relative cell references. Now that we have that down, let's move to the next one. This is going to be a lot more fun. Let's do conditional formatting on multiple cells at the same time. So remember, for conditional formatting custom formulas, the only thing that has to happen is it has to evaluate to true or false. That's all that we need. So the formula for this conditional format evaluated to true, this one evaluated to false, this one evaluated to true. So that's all we need, is to have a formula or a function that outputs true or false. That's it. We can make it as complex or as simple as we want after that. So let's go ahead and apply some interesting rules here. Let's say that we want to check if the manufacturer is ASC and if their stock is less than 50. Maybe we want to initiate a purchase order if it gets to that point. Lots of different things we could do. So let's go down here. I'll make it a little bit bigger. And let's enter our formula. So all it has to do is evaluate to true or false. In this case, we can use the AND function. We don't have to use the if function here. So AND, so we want to see this equals ASC, this less than 50. Now we have our formula. Perfect. And then copy it over here. Now let's copy it down and let's check it, make sure everything's okay. True, ASC 40, and it looks like there's no other one. ASC 68, 90. Okay, let's make another one so it goes below that. Let's say 45. Oops. Perfect. And you can see this conditional format automatically updated as well. I love conditional formats. All right, so now we have it for 2 cells, and we just have to figure out what we want to be highlighted. Do we want this to highlight or this to highlight? We probably want the stock or maybe the part number so you know exactly what you want to reorder. So let's select stock, conditional formatting, new rule, down here, paste our formula, choose our format. Let's make this one maybe red. Hit OK. Perfect. You see, it's so easy. Now, when you copy paste the formulas, make sure that you do double click the cell so you can copy exactly what's in there. And of course, make sure that your ranges are relative or absolute based on what you need to do. For instance, if we weren't going to hard code ASC in here, maybe we were going to reference another cell like H1 up here. Let's say, go like this, C2 equals H1. You would want to put the dollar signs around H1 so that it didn't update when we copied it down. So let me do this now, copy it down, type ASC. So you want the H1 to stay the same for every formula. So that's a case where you're going to mix absolute and relative cell references and how you might do that. Sometimes you want to have a little drop-down menu over here, and when you change the options, you could change it from ASC to BSC. Then the conditional formatting within the table itself can update. And that's actually a really neat way to have your table seem kind of dynamic and look really cool, especially when you're presenting it to other people, but it's really not that much work. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to show you a couple different ways to do this. I'm going to go ahead and put ASC back in here. ASC, copy you down. Okay, so we've got this formula. Nice, neat, super simple. Now let's say that we want it to be 2-tiered. So let's say that we want to have a reorder, purchase order made if the ASC manufacturer parts are below 50, but for the BSC if they're below 100. Maybe there's a higher purchase rate for the BSC, so we need to make sure we have more items in stock, and we want to do both of these at the same time. Now I'm going to show you perhaps a logically more simple way that somebody might do this, and then how we can do it a little bit more like we just did the last formula. So how a lot of people are going to do this is with the if statement, and you are more than free to do that. We simply use the if. Now we make our logical test. We can test and. Actually, let's go ahead and just paste this in here because this is our first rule. So equals if, then that. So if it equals ASC and is less than 50, we want to initiate a reorder, so true. Then comma, if it's not true, if it doesn't equal ASC or it's not below 50, then we want to do one more check. So if, and now we want to do another and, we can say C2 equals BSC, comma, and the stock is less than 100. Close the and, comma, if that's true. If it equals BSC and is less than 100, we output true, so it will highlight so we can reorder it. If it does not, we will output false. Close the second if statement, close the first if statement. Hit enter. Okay, that's a lot of stuff. Looks really long, but it's not too big. It's just two and functions inside of an if function and another if function. So let's copy it over here, test it out, copy it down, make sure it copied perfect. Now let's see, true, should be true, yes. We go to the BSC, BSC, less than 100, yes, reorder. Here, ASC over 50, nope. Here, BSC over 100, nope, no reorder. So it's much more helpful to troubleshoot it like this in your spreadsheet, as I've already mentioned. And now we've got this nice, neat, long, complex formula that we can copy in here for conditional formatting. So I could go ahead, copy this guy, go over here. You don't really have to select all of the cells, but I just find it a little bit easier to not have issues if you do that. So here, manage rules, double click, just highlight it, delete everything, and paste in the big long formula. Hit OK. OK. And there we go. Now I've showed you two ways you can do something like this using the AND function because it returns true or false, using the IF function with some AND functions in it. This might actually logically be a little bit easier for you to follow and troubleshoot in the future. That's why I showed you how to do it this way. But you can also use the method that we did just a moment ago. So here's one and what you want to do this time is put it inside of an OR function. So one and there, let's close that, go back here, copy the second one. So now we have both AND functions within an OR function. So the OR function says if one or the other is true, I want to output true. And the AND function says both of the things inside of me must be true for me to output true. So you can see when I copy this, and let's go over here, paste it, it should be exactly the same. Perfect. So you can use the longer if or the OR and the AND functions. Now, when you're working within the spreadsheet itself, it's oftentimes not very useful to output true or false. So you're going to stick with an if function, and here where it says true and then true or false, you'll output some text or something useful for the user. But when we're dealing with conditional formats, all you need is true or false, yes or no. So you can eliminate the if statement. But like I said, if it's a little bit more confusing for you to use or and like this, stick with the if statement. It doesn't matter if it's longer, so long as it makes it easier for you to understand, troubleshoot, and change in the future. Now we're building up a lot of formulas, and I'm going to delete them from the spreadsheet now, but at the end of the tutorial, I'll put them back in a way so you can see all of the examples. Because I think showing you examples of different formulas and ways you can do conditional formatting will help to give you a better idea of what you can actually do on your own for your own data set. So the next thing is I want to show you that you can use the text manipulation functions. Just very simple. So let's say here, we want to see if the manufacturer is ASC and the part is also ASC, but the part is in the very middle of this cell. You can see down here we have two CSCs. So first things first, let's get the middle part out. I like to do formulas in segments or little chunks to make sure everything works before I create the larger formula. Here we're going to use the mid function. So mid text start number. I want to get the ASC. You can see that that starts at 1, 2, 3. start number 3. How many characters? ASC, 3 characters long, 3. And we have ASC, perfect. Now since the data is formatted all the same, here it makes our text manipulation functions very simple, but you can use whatever text manipulation functions you want to do whatever you need to do. Now we want to test if this equals this. Super simple. So let's combine the two. Perfect. Now go ahead and copy this dude up here. True, ASC, 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 and then a bunch of false. Let's go ahead and copy this guy. We shall put him right here. Conditional formatting, new rule, paste it in. Everything's okay because we have relative cell references. Hit OK. And I forgot to choose the formatting. Manage rules, double click, formatting, make this light blue. Okay, okay, okay. It can be a bit tedious. So that's how I can use the text manipulation functions. You see, it's just like you would use them within the spreadsheet. It's just that you have to make it output a true or a false. So to do that, that's where we use this equal sign. We're using a comparison operator here. So you can use equals, not equals to, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. Now here we just want to see if it equals it or if it doesn't equal it. Now let's get into something more fun. Let's do highlighting of entire rows. You should pretty much understand how to do this now, but there's a little bit of a caveat. So let's go ahead and copy this guy actually and make a set of this data, move it over here, and I'm going to say entire rows. Go ahead and clear all of the rules very quickly, entire sheet. I hate these little green arrows. They're so annoying. Convert to number, number sort, ignore error. Okay. So we want to highlight an entire row. First, we have to figure out a condition. What makes us want to highlight the entire row? Let's go very simple with stock. The stock is getting low. So let's just say something like this. This cell is less than 50. All right, so we have a few rows that are going to be highlighted here. Now I'm not putting any other constraints on it. Let's just keep it nice and simple. Now, let's go ahead and copy this data. First, you want to select your entire table, conditional formatting, new rule. Right here, here, copy it in, format. Let's give it a nice light blue hue. And let's see what happens. Wow, this table looks really messed up, doesn't it? Can you tell what the issue is? The problem here is that we copied this for an entire table. All of our other examples, we've just been doing the rows. So I messed up on doing absolute or relative cell references. Like I said, number one way that you're going to cause issues. And this doesn't, it's not obvious what the problem is here. This just looks really wacky. So let's go over here. We don't want the column to change. We want the row to change, right? We want it to update for each row. But we don't want it to change based on the columns that we copy it to. So the columns are going to stay the same. So we put the $ in front of the D, and we don't put the $ in front of the 2. Leave it like that. Now this right here, nothing's going to happen here. It's going to look the same. But when we go here, copy that. Let's go ahead and put it back up here. Conditional formatting, manage rules, delete, paste it back in, hit OK, OK, and there we go. So our table looks nice, neat, and perfect. And all we had to do was add that one little $. So you can see you can make the entire row highlight based off of any one of the columns. Doesn't matter which one you use. Just make sure that you have a dollar sign in front of the column. And then select all of the table, everything you want to highlight, so as many columns as you want to highlight, and then apply the conditional formatting. So it's really simple. And let's say this was updated, so no more row highlight. Now I'll go ahead and clear this. Once again, I'll have this formula at the end of the tutorial listed really nicely. Let's do conditional formatting across worksheets. So here's my master worksheet, and you'd have a bunch of stuff here that could summarize all of your data and combine it and present it however you wanted. And let's say one of the cells, one of the pieces of data that you want is something to do with inventory. Not only do you want to list the inventory perhaps, but you want to have it all added together, and you want to know if you need to go and rebuy something, restock something. So over here in the stock table, we want to see if anything over here is low enough that it needs to be repurchased. Let's keep it simple, so it's not going to be specific to manufacturers here. Once again, we want to make our formula in a separate cell, equals min, go over here, select our stock, close parentheses. Now let's hit, let's say, less than 50 once again. And so what we did here is, remember, I told you we need something to compare the left and the right side, something to compare this function with over here. So we've compared the minimum amount of stock for the cells there with 50. So if I take this out, we can see that the minimum is 20, which means something needs to be reordered. Okay, now that we have it to output true or false, we want to copy this, select the cell, conditional formatting, new rule, down here, same thing, copy paste it in. So you'll notice that when we copy paste it in here, it still has the reference to the other worksheet. So the formula and function is just the same as it would be in the worksheet when you're working between multiple worksheets. Nothing changes. Just make sure that you build this guy in the worksheet first and make sure it works, and then just copy paste it here into the conditional formatting window. Get our format, red, OK, OK. Now we have a nice visual reminder on our master worksheet that the inventory is low and we need to go to the stock worksheet and figure out what needs to be repurchased or reordered. And that can really make your master worksheet quite nice. Now let's copy this guy, and I'll show you another cool thing. Create copy. Okay. This time, let's do formatting just like it would be done if it was a table. So if it had a table format, sometimes you don't want the table format, but you still want it to look kind of cool like that. So conditional format, clear rules from entire sheet. Now let's have the rows alternate. This is really cool. How you want to do this, there are a couple different formulas. I'll show you the old one and the new cool one. So we need to figure out which row is odd, which row is even, so that we can actually alternate them. So the original way is equals mod open row, comma 2 equals 0. Copy it down. You can see false, true, false, true, false, true. So that's how you can alternate the row colors. And if you wanted to change that up, reverse it, we could change the equal sign to a not equal sign like that. And here we go. And just like the example 2 examples ago, you can understand how we're going to alternate the row colors now. We're just going to use this formula, select the data table, and pop it in there. This function that we're using here, just to cover it real quick, it's a modulus function. It's used all the time in programming. It's basically just going to divide the row by whatever number you put here and return the remainder. So this is saying if there is a remainder or is not a remainder. Kind of confusing. Now what we could have used instead is this, equals is odd, returns true if the number is odd. Then we use the row function again, which returns the number of the current row. Close parentheses, and you can see we get the same result, or equals is even row, same thing. I'll have all these formulas for you at the end of the tutorial, no worries, but this is how you do it. Let's choose this formula is odd row. We don't have to worry about cell references here. Select everything, conditional formatting, new rule, paste it in, format, light blue, okay, okay. Now we have nice, neat table formatting without having any of that other table garbage on there, which, yes, though can be helpful, can also be rather annoying if you don't need it or want it. Now, the last two things that I'm going to show you are how to work with conditional formats, kind of. So let's say that you have the conditional formats like this. It's set up, and I want to quickly and easily copy it to another worksheet. So let's go ahead and make our new worksheet. And then what we're going to do is we will remove all the conditional formatting from this guy. Let's say it doesn't have any. And let's go here and we want to apply it to this worksheet or however many other worksheets there are. So we go here. We want to select the other worksheets that we want to apply it to. So you hit the Control key and you select the other worksheets, or you can simply hit, let's get away from that, Shift and select the worksheet, and then every worksheet in between these two will be selected as well. Then we select the data. We go to the Home tab, Fill, Across Worksheets, then choose Format. Let's say the data is different on each worksheet. Format. Okay. Now we can go here to our second worksheet, and it's automatically copied over. That's a really neat tip that's going to save you a lot of time. Note though that all of the data has to be in the exact same place on the worksheet. So the data doesn't have to be the same, it just has to be in the same location. Now the last thing I want to show you is how to find out where all your conditional formats are. So here it seems pretty easy, but someone might actually not know that these are conditional formats. But let's go back to our Stock tab, and you want to know where all the conditional formats are. Well, we could go to Conditional Formatting and click Manage Rules. And if you have a cell like this selected without any rules, it's going to show you nothing is selected. But if we go up here, Show Formatting Rules for, change current selection, you can change it to this worksheet. You're going to see all of the conditional formats that are applied on this worksheet. You can see where they apply to, so the cells and the ranges, and the conditional formats themselves. And you can go ahead and double click them if you want to change anything about it. However, I do recommend that you do not change the formulas and functions inside of this little window right here. If you want to change this, just copy it, paste it into the worksheet, change it there, then copy paste it back. It's going to save you a lot of headaches. You can also view the conditional formats for the other worksheets, but I find it's not really as useful if you're not viewing that worksheet, so I prefer just this worksheet so you can go ahead and see some of the output, see the formulas here, and adjust it as you want. Now, after that, if you didn't want to use that feature, what you can also do, go to the Home tab, find and select, go to Special, and in this window right here, click Conditional Formats. Hit OK, and that's going to highlight every cell that has a conditional format applied to it. So you can see that within the worksheet. So it's really cool. And if you wanted to, you could leave them selected, go up to Conditional Formatting, hit Manage Rules, select this worksheet, or Current Selection will actually select all of the ones right there. But if you're not sure if they're all selected, maybe you clicked another cell in between then, and going here, you can still click this worksheet. And it's nice. It creates a more pleasant visual representation of where all your conditional formats are and allows you to edit and change it in a nicer way. So that was a lot of conditional formatting here. Those 8 tips took quite a bit of time, but I wanted to make sure that I showed you the versatility that is available within the conditional formatting. So you don't just have to apply it to this worksheet or a single cell or a range here or there. You can apply it to tables, entire rows. You can use different worksheets. There's all sorts of things you can do. And though I didn't cover every topic in this tutorial, there's quite a bit more you can do with conditional formatting. I wanted to get you comfortable with doing custom conditional formats, making sure the absolute and relative cell references are correct and that your formulas always return true or false. So the biggest takeaways I would hope that you get from this tutorial are always use your formulas, make your formulas within the spreadsheet first, make sure they output true and false, test them on your data to make sure you get the desired result. Then apply them and make sure that you have the absolute and relative cell references correct so you don't get any weird or funky errors. So after all that, I hope you feel more comfortable in making complex formulas and functions for your conditional formatting rules in Excel. I hope you liked the tutorial. If it was helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe and accept notifications so you can see all the new tutorials.